when you lease a car, instead of buying a car and this represents the whole car, you're saying, I can't afford that. Let me just buy that part of the car. That part of the car for 3 years. Most leases on average today are 3 years. But because of the price of cars going up, some leases now are going to 5 and 6 years. Still bring down the price of the car. In general, if you bought a car, you will spend about 50% more in buying than you would in leasing. And why would you lease? If you do this right, there's no difference, there's no cost saving, okay, in leasing and buying, because most of you don't know how to lease. You know that the car to buy it was $800, but you could lease it for $450, and you think that's a good deal, but it really should have been $390, but you don't know how to do the calculation. So that's why I'm going to show you the calculations and what's involved, and then we'll go back and add some things to the buy and the lease. So a lease is a long-term rental. Instead of renting a car for a day, you're in essence renting the car for 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. So you're actually, and I have to make a change here because I left something out, so we'll do that in a minute. So we're just going to do the same type of work, but a lease payment is done finally differently, and there's two portions. Hopefully I get to one of them today. So we're going to lease it that same way we buy it. We're going to look at the MSRP. We're going to look at the invoice. We'll add 300 to 500. Okay, and again, this is not always true. It's not always true. It's not true for a Lamborghini. It won't be true if you bought a 16 today. For example, I've just seen a lot of ads where it says, get $10,000 off of this car, get $7,000 off of this car. And it's a 2016. So all these dealers are starting to do what I've already said, that they are knocking off that 1 year's of depreciation to get rid of the stupid car. Now, we didn't used to see a lot of this because I assure you, they first tried to sell their 2016 by saying, I'll give it to you at invoice, or give it to you $500 below invoice. But now, as we're really into the 17s now, they want all those 16s away. So we're going to do it the same way, but now it's going to be called the price to lease instead of the price to pay. But I did forget, while we did put minus the trade-in, again, we won't use a trade-in, I did forget to put over here minus incentive or rebate. So it is minus your incentives or rebates. We still have to check that the same way. So please add that. It's the same as buying a car. And then capital cost reduction is just another name for down payment, which actually came in down here. The capital cost reduction we put up here. Here, it was done after the tax, not for a lease. That's one of the differences. So, lease amount, we'll use the letter L for that. It's just like buying a car, but whatever we are going to put down payment will come off right on the top as capital cost reduction. And a lot of these ads you're seeing on TV will say $500 a month with a $2,000 capital cost reduction. Just another word for down payment, but it's calculated up here, not down here after the sales tax. Any questions on that? Yes.
Are you then going to divide it by the number of months?
Well, yes, and that's where I'm going to, but there's going to be two portions of this payment. That's going to be one of them.
Okay.
But before we can do that, I have to tell you what a residual is.
Okay.
So, before I go to the next slide here, when you lease, remember, if you bought a car, picture the car as buying it here and one day selling it here. Of course, it would help if I put buying there. When you lease, you're buying it here, but you're really leasing it there, and you only want to use this portion of the car. That's all you want to use. 3 years, 4 years, whatever it might be. Well, for us to do this, we need to know what the car is worth over here. What is it worth? Because we can't see what our payment is unless we know how much we're spending. The only way to know how much we're spending is knowing what it's worth when we're ready to give the car back. That's called the residual calculation. I will always give you that. You actually can find it online. The residual calculation. And before I do the calculation, which is on your sheet here, when you buy a better car, better, quote, is a car that's well in demand, that people want, that people know will last a long time, the residual is much higher than the same length of lease for a piece of garbage car. Now, I'm using those terms as hyperbole. Okay, there aren't too many cars that are real garbage. But if you go ahead and buy a Lexus or lease a Lexus for 3 years and lease an SUV or the RH350 in the same class of SUV as a Mitsubishi, the Lexus, are you okay up here?
Yeah. Oh, my neck just hurts. Oh, you're right.
Kids are weird. So we have a Lexus, we have the same type of SUV as a Mitsubishi. The Lexus, after 3 years, is still worth about 62% of its value. The Mitsubishi is worth about 45% of its value. So cars with higher residuals means even if it's a much better car, it actually might not cost much more to own that car, okay, or to lease that car. So we need to know how to get the residual. The residual is going to be the MSRP. The MSRP, that's the MSRP with the destination charge and any of the options. The MSRP right at the bottom total there. And we're going to multiply it by the residual, what the car is worth. It is 8%. So if I tell you a $35,000 MSRP car, it's always based on this, not what we agree to pay the dealer. If I say that residual is 60%, you are just going to multiply it. Let me just think about how I want to say this. Yes. You multiply it by that, and you're going to get 30, 18, 21. That car is worth $21,600. That will be the residual amount. You take the MSRP and multiply it by the residual, and that is what the car is worth. Then, I'm going to go to the 21,000.
Wait.
21,000 what? Oh, I thought I did the right. What did I say, 35,000?
35.
Okay, 30,03, it's 21,000. That would be the residual. In a lease payment, so let's do this now. The lease payment has two parts to it. A depreciation part and an interest part. Right now we're working on the depreciation part. The depreciation part is the lease amount. That's the amount we just calculated on the first page. The same way we buy a car, and we take away the capital cost reduction, just the way we did it over where? Must have changed things, did I? Our requirements, it should be here. There it is. Okay, that lease amount that we calculated. So we are going to take that lease amount, subtract the residual amount. That represents the amount of the car that we've used. What the car is that we agreed to pay, what it's worth when we're done, subtract that gives us the amount that we actually used of the car. We okay with that? Then we do exactly what you wanted to do, Bernie. You divide by the term of the lease, 48 months, 39 months, 36 months. That's the depreciation portion. That is the depreciation payment. L minus R divided by the term of the lease. So in this case, if we had a $35,000 car, the residual amount was $21,000, we would have used $14,000 worth of the car. Our term, maybe it's 48 months. Somebody do that? 14,000 divided by 48 for me? Anybody?
Oh, term in months?
The term in months.
How much was it?
14,000 divided by 48.
291.
So your depreciation payment would have been $291. And when we do these calculations, you'll have to show me the way you set things up as well as do the math. You okay with that? Okay. Any questions? And again, you'll be able to use your stupid sheets. I don't expect anybody to memorize this. This is the way you buy a car. You should, know what to do and use your notes and resources.
So the MSRP times residual, that amount would be,
That's your residual amount. That is the R here in residual.
okay.
Okay, that's what the car is worth after. Okay, so whenever I go out to get and I've been leasing now for 30-some years. One of the first questions I ask is, what is the residual amount of this car? Now, because I've been doing Lexus or Mercedes for a long time, I already know what the residuals are before I even go in. But you want to know that. Okay. Now, yes.
Mr. Royce, what is the 291?
That is the well, forget what the word is. We're paying $291 a month because multiplied by 48, that'll be 14,000. But that's how much of the car we use. The car started at 35,000 after we were done. It's only worth 21,000 when we're finished. So I've used 14,000. I'm responsible to pay that 14,000. Are you okay? Are you having a bad headache or? Your hair falling out? Trying to hold it in? I don't know. Okay. You okay? One?
Yeah, bro.
All right. The interest portion presents the problem. Because when you bought a car, on that calculator, didn't we put an interest rate in it?
Yes.
Because we're borrowing money. We haven't paid for the money we're borrowing. But we're not borrowing for a full car, are we? We're borrowing only for a few years of that car. So the interest portion of the car, the dealer would love us to pay the interest on the entire amount of the car, the L. That's what he would love. But we're not stupid, are we? We say, no, every month I drive it, this car is worth less. Why should I pay you interest based on what the car is? So the dealer says to me, okay, what would you like to pay me? I want to pay based on what it's worth when I'm done, the residual. And the dealer says, bad boy, you're being selfish. You only want to pay what it's worth when we're finished. What about all those months when it wasn't finished? So we do what we should do, all do, learn to compromise. The interest portion, we take the L that we can calculate it, we add it to the R, the residual, then we divide by
The term.
2.
What?
That's the amount of the car that we're willing to pay interest on. We're going in the middle between what I bought, what my residual is, divided by 2. Now neither one of us can complain. We okay with that? We're not done with that. That's only a number. I haven't done the interest. But now, well, let me do this in case you get dismissed. That gives me the amount that we've agreed on that I'm willing to pay interest on, which means now I have to multiply by the interest, but the interest is the annual percentage rate, the rate of interest, but the APR as a number Well, let me just do it like this first. The APR is a percentage.